Deep in the Mojave National Preserve, far from any town or highway, stands the Goldome Mill. From a distance, it looks like a strange city of rusted steel and concrete rising suddenly from the desert floor. Conveyor belts snake across the hillside, tanks sit like giant empty drums, and skeletal towers loom against the endless blue sky. The Mojave itself is unforgiving, a place where summer temperatures soar above 110 degrees, where winter nights plunge below freezing, and where winds scream across the ridges with sand sharp enough to strip paint from metal. This harsh environment made mining here both dangerous and incredibly expensive, yet it also protected vast reserves of gold. Prospectors first tested these hills in the late 1800s, convinced fortune lay hidden beneath the rock. Most failed, but the lure of riches never faded. Nearly a century later, Goldome was built as a bold, industrial answer, a massive mill meant to finally wrestle treasure from one of the toughest and most unrelenting landscapes in the American West, a place where only the most determined ambitions dared to take root. The name Goldome combines two words, gold and dome. Some say it referred to the rounded hills nearby, while others claim it symbolized the grand vision of striking it rich under a golden roof. In either case, by the late 1970s, investors believed they could finally turn this remote corner of the Mojave into a profitable venture. Rising gold prices, paired with new technology, convinced them it was possible. Construction crews carved roads into the desert, poured foundations, and raised the enormous steel skeletons that still stand today. The mill itself was ambitious, a state-of-the-art facility designed to process thousands of tons of ore each day. It was built with massive crushers, chemical leaching tanks, and an intricate system of conveyor belts that moved ore from one stage to the next. Workers from nearby towns commuted long hours, enduring the heat, dust, and isolation. To them, the Goldome Mill wasn't just another job site, it was the promise of a lasting operation that could finally tame the desert and extract the wealth hidden within its unforgiving mountains. At its peak, the Goldome Mill pulsed with constant activity. The clang of machinery echoed through the valley, while clouds of dust drifted into the desert air. Trucks rumbled along dirt roads, delivering raw ore to the crushers. Inside the mill, workers in hard hats monitored gauges, adjusted levers, and kept the complex operation running hour after hour. Each shift brought its own challenges: blistering heat during the day, freezing winds at night, and the ever-present risk of accidents in such a massive industrial environment. Yet despite the hardships, there was also a sense of pride. For many, Goldome offered steady employment in a region where opportunities were scarce. Paychecks from the mill supported families, fueled small businesses, and tied the local economy to the desert's uncertain promise. The mill became more than steel and concrete, it became a symbol of determination. Against the backdrop of the Mojave's vast silence, Goldome stood as proof that human effort could carve out a foothold, even in one of the most inhospitable places in North America. The Goldome Mill represented a modern-day echo of the 19th century gold rush. Earlier prospectors in the Mojave had worked with hand tools, dynamite, and mules, chasing veins of quartz and ore through dangerous hillsides. By contrast, Goldome was meant to operate on an industrial scale, processing low-grade ore that old-timers would have dismissed as worthless. Advances in chemistry and engineering made it possible to extract gold from rock once considered barren, and investors were eager to profit. In this way, Goldome symbolized a bridge between the old frontier spirit and the new age of corporate mining. Instead of small camps and panhandlers, the desert now hosted towering tanks, labyrinthine conveyors, and a workforce that relied on heavy machinery instead of picks and shovels. The promise was that science, capital, and persistence could finally deliver what fortune seekers had dreamed of for a century. And for a brief time, it seemed as if Goldome might actually succeed where so many others had failed. What set Goldome apart was its use of cyanide heap leaching, a chemical process that allowed miners to recover microscopic particles of gold. Ore was crushed into small pieces, piled onto giant pads lined with plastic, and sprayed with cyanide solution. The liquid trickled through the rock, dissolving tiny flecks of gold that were later collected and refined. This method was far cheaper than traditional smelting and required less energy, making it ideal for low-grade deposits. But it also carried risks. Cyanide is highly toxic, and even small leaks could contaminate soil and groundwater. Workers were trained to handle it with care, yet accidents did happen, and the desert winds carried fumes and dust far beyond the mill site. At the time, however, few questioned the practice. The focus was on production, tons of ore moved each day, gallons of solution circulated, and bars of gold shipped out to waiting markets. Goldome's technology was hailed as efficient, modern, and proof that the Mojave still held riches for those willing to seize them. During its brief peak, Goldome seemed unstoppable. Gold prices were high, investors were optimistic, and the mill operated around the clock. Local newspapers ran stories about its output, and nearby towns saw an influx of workers. Motels filled with contractors, diners bustled with late-night crews, and small businesses benefited from the flow of paychecks into the region. For a time, the desert seemed alive with promise, echoing with the same optimism that once drew prospectors westward in covered wagons. Inside the mill, the machinery roared non-stop. Crushed or clattered across belts, tanks frothed with chemical reactions, and furnaces glowed as gold was poured into molds. To many, this was the future of mining, large-scale, scientific, and unstoppable. Families hoped Goldome would last for decades, creating stable jobs in a land not known for stability. The boom years gave the Mojave a fleeting sense of prosperity, proof that even the most unforgiving desert could briefly be turned into a land of opportunity. Every boom carries the seeds of decline, and Goldome was no exception. By the mid-1980s, gold prices fluctuated, and operating costs soared. Fuel, chemical supplies, equipment maintenance, and wages consumed profits. Even in good months, margins were slim, and in bad months, losses mounted quickly. The desert itself pushed back. Equipment corroded under sun and sand, while water, critical for processing ore, had to be hauled in at great expense. Environmental concerns also mounted as cyanide leach pads raised alarms with regulators. Investors who had been eager grew cautious, and optimism gave way to doubt. Workers felt the shift. Paychecks continued, but rumors of layoffs spread. The mill's towering steel structures, once symbols of prosperity, now appeared fragile, struggling against both nature and time, signaling that Goldome's dream of Mojave riches was entering its most uncertain phase. As the 1980s ended, Goldome's operation slowed. Costs climbed steadily while gold prices struggled to keep pace. Each ounce extracted yielded less profit, prompting investor withdrawals and layoffs. Equipment that once ran constantly now sat idle, rust spreading across conveyor belts and chemical tanks. Local communities suffered. Families who had relocated for mill jobs faced shrinking paychecks, shuttered businesses, and empty streets. Optimism vanished as economic dependence on the mill turned into hardship. Meanwhile, environmental hazards loomed. Cyanide and other chemicals from tailings threatened soil and water. Goldome, once hailed as a model of modern mining, had become an unsustainable and risky venture, leaving behind both economic and ecological consequences for the Mojave Desert. By the early 1990s, Goldome had halted operations. Machinery was shut down, workers were sent home, and the site was left to the desert winds. Abandoned conveyors, tanks, and buildings created a haunting industrial skeleton. For former workers, the silence was painful. A place once alive with activity now stood frozen, overtaken by drifting sand, rust, and sun-bleached concrete. To outsiders, the mill became a strange curiosity, a ghost of industrial ambition in the Mojave. But its legacy was serious. Chemical residues and tailings persisted, marking Goldome not only as a failed enterprise, but also as a lasting environmental hazard requiring monitoring and cleanup for years to come. Today, the Goldome Mill stands as a silent ruin in the Mojave National Preserve, rising like a monument to ambition. From afar, rusted tanks and steel skeletons appear almost otherworldly against the desert sky. Up close, sagging conveyor belts, crumbling foundations, and pools of stagnant water reveal a harsher reality. Wind sweeps through hollow structures, carrying sand and dust that slowly buries what remains. For explorers and photographers, the sight is both fascinating and cautionary. It evokes lost opportunity while reminding visitors of nature's persistence. Beneath the visual intrigue, however, lies a serious concern. Goldome is a Superfund site. chemical residues linger in soil and tailings, and government agencies continue ongoing monitoring and remediation. The mill thus tells a dual story, one of human ambition and one of long-term consequences in a harsh and unforgiving landscape, where the desert endures and slowly reclaims what humans leave behind. The rise and fall of Goldome offers lessons beyond mining. It illustrates the limits of technology and capital against environmental realities and market unpredictability. Advanced machinery and careful planning could not fully overcome the Mojave's remoteness, extreme climate, and uneven ore deposits. Goldome shows that even ambitious projects are constrained by geography, economics, and nature. The mill's remains highlight industrial consequences. Cyanide pads, chemical tanks, and tailings require government intervention. The Superfund designation reflects the responsibility that follows when environmental risks are underestimated. For local residents, the site is a cautionary tale about relying on a single industry. For historians and visitors, it stands as a reminder of the tension between human ambition and the desert's enduring forces, a testament to both ingenuity and the inevitable costs of overreach. Now, Goldome sits quietly in the Mojave National Preserve, a place of reflection and curiosity. Rusted steel towers and abandoned buildings evoke both the promise and peril of industrial mining. The hum of machinery is gone, replaced by wind over sand and the occasional call of desert wildlife. Even in silence, the mill tells a story of human ambition, technological achievement, and eventual decline. As a Superfund site, it is actively monitored for residual hazards. Pools of contaminated water, chemical residues, and tailings remain, a lasting mark of past operations. Yet the desert slowly reclaims the area, and the ecosystem endures around the ruins. Goldome is a relic, a cautionary tale, and a monument to ambition. It reminds us that even the grandest human efforts are temporary, while the Mojave persists, patient and unyielding. And that's the story of the Goldome Mill, brought to life here through this narrated ChatGPT video, crafted by Krazymotomines. Thanks for watching, and for joining us on this journey into the heart of the Mojave.